Good morning. Apologize. Yesterday we got cut off. And for whatever reason, I lost my signal out here. I don't have Wi-Fi in my shop, and some days there's like that. Today we finished the book of 2 Samuel. And chapter 21 begins with a famine for 3 years in the land and under the reign of King David. And this is something that puzzles me because the king inquired, of the Lord, he says, he inquired of the Lord, what's going on? And the Lord's response is that there's blood guilt on Saul and on his house because of that he's putting the Gibeonites to death. And the Gibeonites were not people of Israel, but they were a nearby country or land, and Saul had tried to totally eliminate them. And for whatever reason, God says that this is the problem. You shall make restitution for them. And so King David sends people, and they say, well, we want 7 of the sons of Saul, or 7 descendants of Saul then, so we may put them to death, and then we will, the blood guilt will be, evened out. And again, it's just kind of, this crazy stuff that goes on. But this is what happens. But of course, King David does not send Jonathan's son Mephibosheth, but he sends others. And then verse 10, the Rizpah, who he had sent 2 of her sons, she takes sackcloth and she begins a period of mourning and protection of the bodies of these who had died. And then David goes and gets the bones of Saul and Jonathan from where they've been buried and brings them back. And so they get them all together there. And thinking, okay, things are going to be okay now. No, next thing, Philistines, they attack. They go to war against Israel. And David went down against them. And it says David grew weary. He's been around for a while now, and so he's getting weary. And there are still some of the people who are descendants from giants that are there. Remember, David had killed the one giant, but there were others, and they mentioned one had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, and these were 10 feet tall, and we don't have a lot of information about those. If you were to get a copy, I think, of the book of Enoch, that talks more about the giants, but that's not in our Bible. But there were still some around, a few, and the Philistines had some of them in their army. And some had set out to kill David, but the soldiers protected David. And then it's, King, you are too important to be leading us in battle, and so, you should stay away from the battle. So then, the battle went on, and without David there to lead. But the Israelites are successful against these Philistines and against these giants, and it talks about some of the men who killed some of these giants. And verse 22, there were 4 descendants of the giants in Gath, and they fell by the hands of David and his servants. Well, it wasn't David, it was, the people in the army. And then chapter 22, David has a song of praise for the Lord. And this, if it's not word for Psalm 18, it's, real close anyway, depending on the translation you have. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my redeemer, my God and rock in whom I take refuge. He is my shield, my horn, my salvation. And, praise and thanks to God for the continued leadership in battle and in the land and in all of that David, verse 4 of chapter 22, I call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. And it's just, it goes on, and, chapter 22 is that song of praise. And then chapter 23 begins, it says, now these are the last words of David. Well, he sings this, another song of praise here, and it's somewhat like Psalm 1, but not very much, but it's another song of praise as the beginning of chapter 23. And it's said that these are the last words of David. And then that's the first 7 verses there. And then verse 8, here's the names of the warriors whom David had. And and then it's a list of, and I expected to see Joab right away, but I didn't. It was just, he had Josabab, or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce these names, but he was the chief of the 3. So there were 3, and maybe this Josheb is Joab, just shortened up. I don't know. But, and then next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodo, son of Ahoai, and so it's specific, and he was with David when they defied the Philistines who were gathered, and it talks about how he stood his ground. The Israelites withdrew, but this one man stood his ground and fought the great victory that day. And then the third one mentioned is in verse 11 was Shammah, son of Agi, the Hararite. The Philistines gathered where there was a plot of ground, but, this man took his stand in the middle of the plot, defended it, and brought about a great victory. So the great 3. And, I don't remember that we've heard about them before, but, anyway. And then it talks about more of those, toward the beginning of harvest, verse 13, it says 3 of the 30 chiefs went down to join David. And so the 3 were the 3 top guys of these 30, but the others, are with David. And David, in verse 15, it says, "Oh, that someone would get me water to drink from Bethlehem." And Bethlehem is where the Philistines' headquarters was. That was their stronghold at the time. And of course, then some of the warriors hear that David wants water from Bethlehem. So what do? Well, of course, they go sneak into Bethlehem and they get some water and they bring it back and David drinks it and everything's great? No. It's just crazy. But, so they brought the water to David, at the end of verse 16, but he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord, for he said, "The Lord forbid that I should do this. Can I drink the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" So he wouldn't drink it. And I'm thinking, well, that sure wasn't very complimentary to those warriors that risked their lives and everything to get it. He asks for water and then he gets it. And it just doesn't make sense. Really? Does it? Nope, I don't think so. Anyway, now verse 18, it's now Abishai, son of Zuba, the brother of Joab. So these are the 2 of the main warriors or the battle leaders, commanders we've been reading and hearing about for most of the time. It says Abishai, the brother, was chief of the 30. So, I guess we've known that there are more sub-commanders and stuff, but, this is where it's really kind of singled out. And so Abishai had fought with his spear against 300 men and killed them and won a name beside the 3. So it's commendations for some of these warriors. He was the most renowned of the 30 and became their commander, but he did not attain to the 3. And who's keeping track? Not me. And then verse 20, Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, was a valiant warrior, a doer of great deeds. And so they talk about some of these different warriors. And then verse 24, among the 30, and then it starts to kind of list some of them. And they're probably all 30 listed there. I didn't try to count the names, but there you are there. Chapter 24, again, is a switch. Chapter 22, was that 23? 23 started out, these are the last words of David. Well, we didn't hear the last words of David unless it was that psalm, but we don't hear that David dies, do we? No. Anyway, chapter 24, the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel. And he incited David against them, saying, "Go, take a census." So David sends Joab and Abishai, and they do a census, 9 months and 10 days or 20 days or whatever it was that it took him, 9 months and 20 days in verse 8. And then he reported to the king, that there were 800,000 soldiers in Israel and 500,000 in Judah. And then David, it says, is stricken to the heart because he took a census. And And then he says to the Lord, well, I've sinned greatly. What have I done? And what's going on? Didn't God command the census just as we began this chapter? And now David's feeling guilty for taking the census. I mean, it's just, how can I make sense of this? And this is one of the frustrations that I and many others have as well. Whatever. But the census has been taken, and then the prophet comes to David, and the prophet of Gad says, God is going to offer you three things. You want pestilence, you want 3 years of, you choose the problem. And so David chose the pestilence, and many people die during that. And then at the end of this book, David goes to a man, Araunah, and says, I need your land so I can offer a sacrifice to the Lord. And this man is going to gift the oxen, gift the sacrificial animals. And David says, no, I need to purchase them from you so that the sacrifice, so that it is from me. And we end the book of 2 Samuel with David making a sacrifice to God. And the very last thing, so the Lord answered his supplication for the land, and the plague was averted from Israel. So, it just keeps on going, but yet it seems like David is doing what God has said and everything. And so now on Monday we will, begin the book of 1 Kings and see what goes on from there.